What's up, guys? Welcome back to my channel. Today I bring to you yet another posing showcase, this time featuring Zack Snyder's Justice League, Knightmare Batman and Black Suit Superman 2-pack. Now I must say, this showcase was a bittersweet one for me, as during the making of this we got news that the DC cinematic universe was going to get rebooted. Now whilst I'm sad I won't get to see the vision of these characters get completed, I choose to remember and pay homage to how much I love the Snyder Cut of Justice League. For me, it's one of the greatest superhero films out there. I love Snyder's visual style and always have, so I'm super happy to have these guys in the collection to look back on and remember how epic that movie is and how much I love these actors who portrayed these guys for the time that they did. Including the intro and outro today, we have a total of 14 scenes, and just a reminder that in my showcases I use multiple figures and or accessories to help tell the story. In this video, I'm continuing playing around with the new presentation styles by mixing up how they can look on the shelf next to each other and on the turntable so you can see all the angles along with some music. Lastly, don't forget, if you like my content, do us a favor, hit that like button, notification bell and subscribe to the channel. It helps me grow and continue to make this type of content, not to mention I really appreciate all the support. But now, with that, you know what we do. Scene number 1. To kick this off, I'm going for a team up look with both of these guys. Batman up front, stoic, reaching for his pistol, nothing crazy here. The thing with this figure is, he has so much going on visually that he pretty much looks awesome in any pose you put him in, I feel. There's just something about him that looks epic. Then we have Superman hovering behind him, cape flowing in the wind in a pretty dynamic pose. You might have noticed in the intro that you couldn't see a waist grabber around his waist, and that's because I've opened up his back by cutting the thread of material that goes across the top of the zipper, and I've pulled it down, which allows me to bend a paper clip around the top of the flight pole and use both ends as prongs to slot into the groove of his back to have him suspended in the air without the need for a waist grabber. For me, this is what I do with all of my Superman figures. I think it works better visually and doesn't damage the suit. For this scene, I have them in tight together, emulating a comic book cover look, which is also really good if you're limited for space. This display doesn't take up too much real estate, and by having Batman in front, you can also hide the rest of the flight pole that's holding up Superman. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Scene number 2. Just focusing on Superman here, I wanted to showcase him in a heroic pose worthy of your display. To capture this look, I have him standing on top of the rock base that comes with the battle-damaged Thanos figure. You know, most times when I see Superman posed up in people's collections, he's either standing stoic or hovering in the air. So with this showcase and my previous Superman posing showcase, which is currently out on the channel, go check that out after this for more display ideas. I endeavor to show you that you don't need to be scared to pose him up, because he can do so much more than you think he can. And I think this look here is definitely a way I'd consider leaving him in on the shelf long term at some point. Scene number 3. We have Batman leaping into action with pistol in hand, busting off some shots. For this one, I wanted to play around with trying to get Batman looking quite dynamic, so I brought in this base, not only for him to interact with, but to be able to use the flight pole with it so I can have him stable in this position that you can't get figures into normally without one. Now, this figure is a little restrictive in the midsection and upper legs due to the thickness of the fat suit underneath. So for this one, I'm using the angles here to make him appear more dynamic. That's always something worth thinking about when posing up your figures. If they are not quite as posable as you'd like, look at playing with the angles from which you will view the figure on the shelf. You can always use that to your advantage to achieve the look you're going for. Scene number 4. We have Superman hovering in the air, holding up some rubble. I tried something like this in my previous Superman showcase where I had him holding Mila's Barbie car over his head. So for this one, I wanted to try to have him flying this time holding something up. For me, a pose like this is an iconic way to see Superman displayed. It shows his strength and heroics in one pose. Only problem is, to pull this off in the display, I'd need to use a flight pole to hold him up and then have him holding something much lighter than this base here. For this scene and for photography purposes, what I've done is actually have him upside down, balancing on his hands, leaning back on the clear rod behind him for support. I then filmed it and flipped the image to sell the illusion of him flying. And because of that, I won't have him go around on the turntable this time. Now, whilst I won't leave him like this in the display, I like being able to look back on photos and this video to enjoy this look. If you've done something like this in your display, let me know in the comments down below. Scene number 5. We have Mr. Bruce Wayne sitting on his throne like the boss that he is. This whole look was inspired by the Queen Studios statue of Batman sitting on a throne. But I can tell you, this isn't actually a throne. This is, as you will see when it goes around on the turntable, a gargoyle Batman base by Base Station, I think, that I've just turned around and sat him in to emulate the throne look. I think it works pretty well actually, but I will say to get his lower body to articulate to pull this look off, it took quite a bit of tweaking just to get to this point here. If you're going to attempt to get this figure in a seated position, be sure to take your time and keep adjusting and checking the materials around his waist and upper thighs. You don't want to go in too hard too fast and tear something, that's for sure. Scene number 6. Focusing back on the Man of Steel, but this time he's angry. For this one, I'm working with his original base and flight pole. Again, I'm using the paperclip in the back method to hold him up so we don't have to worry about damaging the material around his waist by using the waist grabber. I've switched out the head sculpts and I'm now using the angry sculpt and have lit up the eyes, which I think is cool for specific scenes when it comes to making videos and doing photography, but it's not a look I'd use for the display much, I don't think. Without the eyes lit up constantly, I don't think it looks quite as good. Lastly, for his cape, I have another piece of wire attached to the flight pole, kicking out the back to have the cape resting on it to keep it up that high. Unfortunately, the wires in the cape are too weak to hold it up that high on its own. Scene number 7. We have Batman plowing through an enemy here. For this scene, I wanted to emulate a moment from the Knightmare scene in BVS, where Bruce started beating the crap out of everyone. I love that sequence and there were so many moments of him kicking ass, so I had to try something similar. For this, I'm using my Logan figure to substitute as a goon for him to battle just for the purpose of the video. You can use whoever you like in your display. To pull this off, I have Logan balancing on a crotch holder and clear rod that comes with this base, and I'm using his leg to block the rod as best I can. Then whilst I have Batman balancing partly on his own, I also have him leaning into Logan, so they are actually helping each other balance for this one. Scene number 8. Continuing with the nightmare scene scenario, we have Bruce now taking control and laying the smackdown. For poses like this in the previous one, I think the screaming sculpt works perfect for them. I wish more figures came with both stoic and aggressive sculpts. It just gives so much more range to the types of scenes you can create. To complete this pose, I added some wire which I folded and stuck down into his belt at the back to have his coat rest on to convey wind and movement behind him. But the hardest part of completing this look was actually getting his left leg into that position to a point where it would help him balance and get him close enough to have his left hand on the side of Logan's head, to give off that look of him almost grabbing the side of his head as he winds up to lay another blow with his right hand. Probably not a pose I'd leave them in for the shelf, but for this video and and for photography, I had to give it a go. I'd like to know, do you guys like to display your figures fighting in your display? Let me know in the comments down below. Scene number 9. We come back to Clark here in the midst of rising up from the rubble. And for me guys, there's no doubt about it. I think this figure really shines in flight poses more so than grounded poses. This whole scene came about because I had an image in my mind for a while now of Supes rising up from the ashes per se in an iconic heroic type of pose. I knew I wanted to be viewing it from below, looking up, as I think that sells the look more and reminds me of the classic moments from the films where people would look up and see Superman hovering above. I knew to pull this off I wanted to hide the flight pole to sell the realism of the pose. First, I'm using the angle of the shot here to help shield the flight pole. Then, I'm using the paperclip method to hold him up so there's no waist grabber. And lastly, to achieve the angle that we have him in here, I'm using 2 pieces of black wire that are going around each foot and the flight pole behind him to not only hold him in place, but to help hide the flight pole. I have to say, I'm very happy with how this one turned out. Scene number 10. Moving back to Knightmare Batman. This is a pose I did in my recent channel members only monthly pose and chill catch up. It's basically a chance to catch up and chat whilst we pose up some figures for fun. If you're interested in supporting the channel, take a look at my memberships to see all the perks, and if you're keen, hop on board and join the Iron Legion. For this pose, I had in my mind that I wanted to make use of the Batman base and try and have Bats up top roaring with pure rage, stepping up into the elements like he's battling against the wind. Using his screaming face sculpt I think is perfect to help convey a pose like this. Then lastly, to finish off the look, I've manipulated his coat to try and sell the illusion of wind rushing by. For photography, this definitely helps elevate a picture when you add in wind, rain or snow-like effects. Scene number 11. We now have another team up pose here with Batman up the back, standing strong on top of the base with Superman in front this time in a dynamic running pose. I think if you have the space and a diorama base like this one, something like this could be a really cool display for you if you want something different when posing both these guys together. This one reminds me of a comic book cover or a movie poster, and I love these types of poses in my display. For Batman's pose, he's pretty basic. The biggest thing for him was getting him to balance on the base with the angle that he's on. For Superman, he's a little bit more complicated. For him, I have him balancing on one foot with the flight pole hidden behind him, and then lastly, I'm using a wire attached to the flight pole to help hold the cape out like that. I really do love how when posing figures with capes you can really enhance the look by posing the cape in particular ways. Scene number 12. We have one last team up, posing up both these figures on the one base. We have Batman with his goggles on and scarf over his face, holding his pistol on top of the base, and then Superman hovering to the side with the red eyes lit up, implying he's not to be messed with right now. With this one, Batman is balancing on his own, no problem, as he's just stepping up onto the base, but the cool thing with this one is I'm using his coat to hide the part of the flight pole that I have heading from the base to behind Superman's leg and cape, which you'll see a little bit of in the next clip. For Superman in this one, it was more about making him look intimidating, just hovering there, which I feel he can do pretty well when you switch out that head sculpt. This one here is one of my favorites. I'd love to know which poses you've liked the most throughout this video. Let me know in the comments down below. Okay guys, to close this one out, I'm showing you where these guys have ended up on the shelf following the filming of this showcase. For now, this is how they will stay until I decide what my next display for the shelf will be. Moving forward, I will be changing out my displays regularly between character type museum posed up displays to more action packed dynamic posed up displays. I'll be doing this as I endeavor to inspire you all to play around and have fun to see what types of displays you can create to help you enjoy your collection more too. And that's it, guys and girls. I hope you've enjoyed this showcase today. Both these two figures are great additions to my DC Snyderverse collection, and I definitely recommend them if you're a fan of not just these characters, but also the film. I thank you all for tuning in, and if you haven't already done so, do us a favor and hit that like button, notification bell, and subscribe to the channel. We now have a channel membership up and running with perks like no other, so check that out too and see if it's for you. As a thank you to whoever hops on board, I will do my best to give you all the value I can for your support. Lastly, we got reviews and unboxings, story-styled posing showcases, live streams including my shows Posed Up, where I interview fellow collectors and content creators whilst posing up figures for fun, plus the rundown that I co-host with my guy Anthony, the Figure Posing channel, where we deep dive into film and TV. But for now, until next time, live life, have fun, and keep posing. I'm out.